Hello to all the audiences and my speakers and all the jury members and all those who are present here. Very welcome to you to the SERI Conference 2021. Our first session, the session which we have which we will be conducting here is crypto realizing possibilities, strength of modern crypto to realize digitization, innovation possibilities. Also, in parallel, in the main auditorium, we have hardware security frontier research use cases and ideas. So, I'll request my audiences who are interested in hardware, they can go there and obviously those who want to listen to crypto, to our the very respected speakers, please stay here with us. So, also in the meanwhile, I would like to inform to all the audiences that you can post your questions and all the queries which you have in the chat box, and then later in the last 5 to 10 minutes, we'll convey those questions related to the session to our speakers. So, in our panel today, we have Dr. Gaurav Varshney, who is assistant professor from IIT Jammu. He's the moderator of this session. I'd like to welcome him on stage. Dr. Gaurav Varshney from IIT Jammu, assistant professor. Hello, Dr.
Hello.
Gaurav.
Hello.
He's the moderator. He'll take the session. And then I'd like to welcome Professor Sourav Gupta. He's a lecturer in School of Computer Science, NTU, Singapore. Can I have Professor Sourav on stage?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Professor Sourav. And then we have Dr. S.K. Hafizul Islam. He's in the Department of CS and Engineering in Triple IT Kalyani.
Hi everyone.
Very welcome. And now we have Mr. Ajit Hatti, who is also the founder of PureID.
Hi
Mr.
all.
Ajit Hatti,
Very good afternoon.
good afternoon. So I will now hand over the stage to Dr. Gaurav Varshney. Sir, it's to you now.
First of all, welcome to all the panel members. And it's indeed a privilege to share the panel with you. So we all know that cryptography is playing a major role in digitization. So the services available through cryptography in the digital world include the power to authenticate an entity, check integrity, verify digital signatures, and ensure end-to-end confidentiality. So cryptography has made the secure communications possible, allowing sensitive applications such as payments to onboard online. From the era of Caesar cipher to the encryption, where we see digital certificates using complex asymmetric cryptographic algorithms. The use of complex cryptographic primitives in blockchain and smart contracts. So cryptography has already proved its utilization. And still there are numerous possibilities in which its support can be realized. The topic of today's panel discussion is very it's very relevant to the current era, and we have so many good panel members who are already working in extensive research areas which relates to cryptography. So I would like to have panel discussion in two rounds, and for the interest of audience, like I'll be taking one question which relates to the area of interest of the panelist, and then we'll take some questions which are general in nature so that all of us can have a debate on what we think about the possibilities of cryptography. My first question will be to Sourav, because he works a lot in decentralized finance and blockchain. So there are so many applications of smart contracts, Sourav, and decentralized finance or DeFi is one of them. So can you bring light on the crypto involvement in this ecosystem? And what are the future applications which are there? And also going forward, like if you see smart contracts are being used in variety of applications in the government as well. So what are the various threats which are possible in this ecosystem and how we can actually solve them so that we can build confidence of the government, of the user, in the use of this ecosystem in the future?
Right. Thanks a lot, Gaurav. So we have a lot of people in the panel who work in different areas of cryptography already, including you, Gaurav, right? So for me, I think my journey has been from cryptography. I used to call that crypto, and now people call crypto, which means cryptocurrencies. So that's a long journey. And I would say that when we used to do cryptography in the traditional sense, as in secure communication, secure storage, secure authentication, all those things, the applications to cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology in general, is a derivative of a lot of interdisciplinary activity. It has been there for decades of research in distributed systems, also in consensus design. A lot of decentralized finance has got to do with economic game theory, which I don't understand very much about. And of course, the financial aspects, the market design principles of it. Again, for the finance part, I'm not an expert. So I'll stick to the difference between the centralized and decentralized finance in terms of blockchain, which is the core technology. As you mentioned, there are lots of development on top of that. But when we look at blockchain, there are different layers to it. We often forget that it's a whole system development. So the distributed systems comes at the bottom layer in most of the cases. And when you design the blockchain consensus on top of it, scalability, security, and privacy, all three come in play. Smart contracts, as we see on the top level, it's more like designing an app on top of an Android ecosystem. But the entire blockchain ecosystem down below is more as the operating system, right? So security again comes in every single layer. You can talk about security only in the smart contracts, which is software security, or you can think of it more as a protocol design security, application security in DeFi sense. You can go deeper and you can talk about which chain you are on. Are you on layer one solution? Are you on a layer two? Are you doing a bridge? Are you doing a roll up? Each one of it has security issue. You can go even deeper and you can talk about the blockchain consensus in terms of game theory. And you can start talking about validator networks. You can talk about proof of stake, proof of work. What are you doing over there? When we talk about the scalability issues, the fun fact in blockchain that I love is scalability in blockchain now comes hand in hand with privacy. So you're talking about privacy day in and day out. You're talking about zero knowledge proofs, both in smart contract level as well as transaction level. So transaction level would be more in terms of say zero cash or Zcoin and so on. And on top of it, you're talking about in smart contracts, so something like bullet proofs, something more in terms of zero knowledge transactions that you're talking about. And there are so many solutions designed. You're also talking about zero knowledge proofs and privacy at the chain level with ZK rollups for scalability, but you're targeting privacy and scalability simultaneously. So there are several aspects of security and privacy and hardcore cryptography, theoretical cryptography that comes in with blockchain. So yeah, I think it's an open field. If anyone in the audience is interested, feel free to ask questions. We can discuss a few of those.
So can you? I have a counter question which is coming up.
Sure.
Uh, so we have to actually use the concept of smart contracts. Like we have seen government is implementing a lot of things. So do you see that the digitization which is happening because of the technology which is already there are some factors which are barrier to the adoption of the blockchain and decentralized finance and things which are coming up. Do you see that there are some barriers that you see from a technical point of view, which are making the application of these things, adoption of these things in the actual real world difficult?
Right. So there are two aspects to adoption. One is the technological barrier. The second one is the barrier in terms of practical applications and regulations in blockchain specifically. So if you talk about the technical barrier side of things, then it's of course scalability of blockchain. But scalability of blockchain is being looked after right now. That's still an open problem, but that's still being looked at. The main problem that I think right now is security of smart contracts in decentralized finance. Why do I say it? Because smart contract security as a piecemeal basis is easier. You can do audits on it. You can think of it more as a software security level. That's fine. But you do not know which smart contracts are going to be composed in what kind of a decentralized finance protocol in the long run. And this composability has its own frictions because one smart contract's vulnerability may not be exposed by the contract, but maybe it's exposed when you're going into a protocol later on designed with this smart contract. So these kind of operations, we do not know. The landscape is completely open. Protocol design, formal verification, and software security, all three have a role to play in this. So that's one big barrier in security. The second is privacy. So security and privacy both go hand in hand. Privacy people are thinking of, but you do not know if you do privacy quite well on a blockchain, then what do regulatory authorities and law enforcement got to say about it? Because you will need to have more of a CFI, centralized finance control and regulations, on top of a decentralized finance platform. And that interaction is not very easy either. So yeah, I think those two are the big issues: the regulation versus privacy, and the security versus the scalability issues. Those are different things.
So do you see that standardization is also playing some role, that because there are no standards, because
Yeah.
there is lack of standard, people are actually fearful of its adoption, majorly in finance sector, where there are a lot of standards. So do you see that this is also one of the reasons?
That's right, but I'll mention two fields simultaneously in this way. So it's not two sides of a coin, it's two very diverse fields. But are there very good standardizations in IoT? There are probably not. It's also evolving. Or Internet of Vehicles, are there very good standards? Probably not. It's evolving. But in those areas, the industry has driven the entire landscape. In the decentralized finance, I believe the similar thing is happening. The industry is driving the market right now, and regulations and law enforcement has to come together to figure out how to standardize it, how to regulate it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'll move to Hafiz. So you have worked a lot in authentication. I've seen a lot of papers with respect to authentication, key exchange that you're doing. I have a very one question, which is actually a debate of this time. So end-to-end encryption, right? So cryptography is playing a very good role in end-to-end encryption. That's very much needed because it's providing privacy, providing confidentiality. But at the same time, actually, I'm taking that question from Sourav. So law enforcement agencies at the same time wants that the encryption which is happening should not be used as a covert channel for communication, right? Or the covert channel for doing say anti-national activities or things like that. So in the era where privacy is needed, at the same time security is needed, do you see cryptography can play a significant role? What comes to your mind when you think about security and privacy in this ecosystem?
Thank you, Gaurav. Yes, your question is very relevant in today's time. So, if you look into the just few days back, we seen some of the problem that some confidential information is actually exposed in WhatsApp. So, I'm not that mistaking that there is a much more problem in the WhatsApp. So, I'm not taking that part. But I'm as a cryptographer, I want to point out some things. So for end-to-end encryption, we know there is some encryption algorithm is involved. So we can use the symmetric key encryption or asymmetric key encryption. But all of us we are aware about the problem with the symmetric key encryption, that both the party need the same key. So suppose if it is some chat-based application, so the both the sender and the recipient must share that key. So that is a huge challenge. So that is why we mostly use the public key cryptography. So in this cryptography, that means each user actually takes two key. One is public and another is private key. So for most of the chat application, what actually they did when I install some chat application in my device, and that is the application itself, it actually computes two key, public and the private key. So public key will be shared among all my contacts, and private key is only keep confidential in my device. But so this is the way that public key cryptography works. So here main objective is to protect the message that we are communicating. So here you see. So suppose I want to send a message to my friends. So my chat application will use the public key of my friends and it will encrypt, and my message is actually that is leaving my device securely, and it can be transmitted over any public channel. So, so in this regard, we have to, before using any encryption algorithm, so first we have to ensure the algorithm that we are using, that is secure, that is well tested, and this is a standards or not. So as per my knowledge, some of the chat application using their own encryption algorithm. So as a cryptographer, my recommendation is something different. I will rather suggest to use the standards, like suppose the for the symmetric encryption like AES or DS, that is well tested and it is recommended by the NIST. So do not use any private algorithms. If some of the algorithm designed and they are patented and it is published as a patent, but I suggest not to use any patent algorithm, because so because if this kind of algorithm is not well tested and it is not popular and it is not used by many people, so some group of the people, or maybe the people those who have purchased that patent, they are using. So there is a question about the security of the protocols, right? The security of the algorithm that we are using. So now come back to the chat application, the public key cryptography. So most of the company, they are actually implemented their own chat protocol and they are designing own algorithms. But as a user, I am not sure which algorithm they are using, and that is not revealed by the that means application developer. So there is one question about the security. So in this case, if we use like any well tested and recommended by the NIST public cryptography algorithm, then that will be most secure. And now we come to the point that after the end-to-end encryption, so why the chat message is exposed or it is revealed. But here is the problem is that the practice of the rules and regulation, right? So I'm sure that the rules and regulation are imposed by the law enforcement agency, but as a user or as a the application developer, they are not actually following all the rules and regulation appropriately. So most of the cases, what we did, suppose before that means whenever we are installing some particular chat application, and the chat application is asking to access my some of the confidential information from the mobile or from my device. And so as we people, we want to always use the free free application or free that is app. So in that case, we blindly allow the developer to access my confidential information. So so in the same device, I may my store my private key. I may store my password for various applications where I just use, and that kind of information can be that means it can be still by other chat application, and they may that means reveal your confidential information from your device. This is one point. And another point is that like for your end-to-end application. So sometimes as a user, I want to back up my chat. Suppose it is for 7 days, 15 days, 30 days, whatever. But in what format the chat developer is storing my message? That is not clear to us because they are saying it is end-to-end encrypted and even it is not revealed to the developer. But they are saying, but really they are following the principle. There is a big question. So, as per my knowledge, if I use some publicly algorithm and suppose it is recommended by NIST, I'm sure that algorithm is not weak and the people, they cannot reveal the actual message from that is ciphertext, right? So there is no loophole in the that means algorithm, but how we are using that algorithm, there is a loopholes. The people are not actually honest in this case. So right, and also now coming to the point that my chat that my message is stored in the server that is by the chat developer application developer. So say they store my message in unencrypted form. And if sometimes that server is attacked by other agency or maybe it's by a third party, and they can get all the message, not only my message, the message stored by all the users, or everything can be revealed.
Yeah,
So
like in the Domino's case, like there is a
yeah.
Domino's and all
Yeah,
the
this is the way actually, and as a cryptographer, I believe that if a cryptographic protocol is suggested by some agency, those are actually providing the record standards. I believe that the protocol is secure. But how the protocol is applied and how the rules and regulation are yeah, that is maintained by the different developers, and there is a question. So this is my concern about the end-to-end encryption.
Yeah. So do you so Saurabh, do you want to add to it? Like, do you want to add to it? Like, because I think that is there any middle way where we can actually have cryptographic solutions which can actually provide security and privacy at the same time? So the thing is like, yes, privacy is ensured through end-to-end encryption, but can we also have a mechanism so that if we say that okay, these are some of the things which have to be filtered out. So, for example, we can use hashing and then keep a track of those hashes which are being communicated between two end systems. And then if those hashes are matching some of the filtered things, then we can filter it out. So do you think that there's cryptography which can play a role in this problem and solution to this problem?
Right. So maybe I'll take a general stance to that, Gaurav. Security and privacy, these do go hand in hand. We say security and privacy together, but the objectives that we expect out of these two are not always the same. So when we say we want security of something, we generally mean security of data in general, which means could be in transit, like an end-to-end encryption system, could be in storage, as Dr. Islam mentioned, that in storage if my chat is stored securely. But when we talk about privacy, it's a very different concept. When you say privacy, the applications which are used by all of us, first and foremost, there is a huge data analysis and data mining side at the back end of every single app. And you cannot avoid that. That's what the market is right now. So if you have to collect all the data and if you have to do something with the data, then the privacy question is not about the security of your data. The privacy question is more about your unit private results that you are providing to that app. Quite literally, you are providing it to the app and you're agreeing to that, whether your data can be traced back to you. That's what the privacy goal is. So tracing it back to you versus somebody getting your specific data, these two are different questions. So if you want untraceability, that's one goal. If you want something to be beneficial for the community, as in it's being used in machine learning, being used in data mining, but still not to be traced back to you, there are, of course, cryptographic solutions like differential privacy. You can talk about homomorphic encryption. You can talk about multi-party computation. There are several cutting-edge research disciplines which look into that. But you may want to not have the traceability aspect, but you may also want to say that it's private. I don't want it to leave my device. That's a very different thing. So then you are asking for an application which doesn't even use your data to provide you with a better service. That's a very different ball game, right? So security and privacy do go hand to hand, but I think we often say it together. We also mix the two things together. These two have slightly different connotations. But yes, there are cryptographic solutions to put in context.
Yeah. So Ajit, I'm taking this question forward. So basically, we are saying that two ends are communicating. It's an end-to-end encryption. Basically, if you're communicating anything, you cannot actually break it. Coming to the standards, it's not possible. But a very important part of security or the weakness which is there is that if you can actually log into that account, right? So for example, if I can log into someone's account, if I can compromise the security of the login process, I don't need to actually do any kind of decryption. So there's a lot of work that is going on in identity and access control. And there are a lot of things, like, for example, if you go forward with respect to the normal login authentication process, username and password, they're not safe. Phishing is there, and a lot of security attacks are possible. Digital payments are coming up, and you cannot actually take that risk. So a lot of cryptography is being involved nowadays. A lot of digital signatures, PKI implementations are there to identify a user or to identify an entity on the internet. So what kind of experiences you have with respect to the cryptographic improvements which are coming up with respect to the identity and access control space where you are currently at? Like, for example, PureID, you have founded PureID. It's an identity management company. So how you see cryptographic involvement in your organization?
Right. So thanks, Gaurav. Hello all. As far as authentication landscape is concerned, people are now what we are seeing is moving away from cryptographic implementations. It was an era just before all the passwordless companies started to come up, when FIDO was a standard and it was purely based on PKI, right? Your FIDO devices, they had private key, and you were supposed to register your public key with the services that you wanted to access without giving any passwords, right? Or use that as a multi-factor authentication on top of your passwords, right? Since provisioning these public keys onto the websites, and then if you lose that FIDO device, then re-provisioning, first of all, de-enrollment of that device and then re-provisioning the public-private key pairs was a very cumbersome task. So people shifted their focus from purely PKI-based solutions to now something like biometrics, right, or behavioral analysis. Now, whatever patterns, fingerprint patterns, facial recognition patterns, or your behavioral patterns are being collected, they might be stored using some cryptographic algorithms, right? But the pure focus is moved from pure PKI to more of user-centric or user-derived factors, okay, or personal factors, which can be behavior, biometrics, facial recognitions, etc. So that's the shift that we are seeing, because for a user, it's with the user, and it is very easy for provisioning that. Now these solutions in future will have a lot of repercussions as far as privacy is concerned, security of that data is concerned, right? Because you cannot replace your biometrics, right? Passwords I can change, but biometrics, yes, you cannot change them, right? And plus your behavior that changes as per your device. The way you swipe or the way you type on one device might be different on another device, right? So though identity space is shifting, the problem of passwords or the difficulty or friction of using PKI to biometrics and behavioral analysis, that will also have problems in future. But as of now, the industry is more focused on these new solutions which users are providing. So I'm seeing a shift, people moving away from cryptography just because it has more friction.
So when you are actually saying that it's moving from cryptography, it's actually using biometrics. Again, you have like more burden of like having secure storage of the information that you're taking from the users. So again, it has a shift to modern cryptography, because when you're storing biometrics, you need to actually have more standards way of storing the data that you're acquiring from the users, or maybe a decentralized way in which you can have the important information of the user stored at multiple locations and then using it to actually create an identity. So do you see that this will actually again require you to have more focus on cryptography, or the identity management companies to have more focus on stronger cryptographic primitives, even if they shift from PKI?
Yeah. So then, in the case of PKI, everyone was using public-private key pair, right? So there was heavy usage of PKI. Now it will be limited just to storage, right? So we don't have to care which symmetric algorithm we are calling to encrypt the data and store it, right?
Because
It's just some algorithm and we can store it. That's it. Okay, even if you part it, make the factors into pieces and then securely store them, but somewhere when you are authenticating a person, you have to assemble them, or you have to decrypt the pieced factors and match it with the incoming factor.
so
Right.
you-
So
so
the risk is there.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the digital signature part of the PKI, I think you will also leave that, like it will be like complete a system where you just send the data over confidential channel and you consider that as authentic, because once you leave PKI, you are actually saying that there is a secret which is being transferred from the user to the entity which is verifying it over an encrypted channel, and that itself is an authentication.
Yes, that's what we are seeing the shift. Okay, rather than signatures were, I haven't seen signature-based authentication before. It was just you prove by signing something. It was not the
So
actual
DSP
signature of
based.
some data which was being verified against users' actual data, right?
Okay.
Uh,
Digital
so that
signature,
that is
which like e-mudra, like if you see e-mudra and other individual certificates which are available nowadays, if you go for patent filing or any government services, you can use a DSC, and then DSC is verifying the user. So that kind of shift, then it has to, like what I'm seeing from what you are saying is that those digital signature and PKI based things, we'll see that there will be a downtrend in the coming time.
correct,
From
because user has to manage the private key securely, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's
So
true.
if you lose the private key, then historically stored signed data, you won't be able to prove that you own it, right? Someone will be able to verify that once if they have the public key, but you won't be able to prove your ownership against that, right?
So a lot of shift
So
will
that's
be
the downside
towards
of it.
QR code based schemes, which we see, which are coming up. QR code, dynamic QR codes, which may carry some cryptographic tokens for digital payments, as we are seeing in
Yeah. So device trust or app trust will be more on rise that we will see. Okay.
Okay, so I would like to then have some questions that we all can actually have some opinions on. So, what are the barriers that we see and the use of modern crypto in the real world? So, I would like to start with Saurav. So, what are the barriers that you see which are there with the use of modern crypto? And the second thing is, we see a lot of things about blockchain implementation by the government. do you see government or even I say private bodies? So do you see that the capabilities of modern crypto are being realized in actual, or is it like we are seeing something different from what we propose and what we see in the real world with respect to the implementations of crypto related schemes or blockchains, for example?
Right, right. Thanks, Gaurav, for the question. I think I somehow sit in the middle of who a perfect practitioner would be. I think Ajit is more of a perfect practitioner amongst us.
Yeah.
He is in the industry. And then somebody who is a pure cryptographer coming from maybe a mathematical background, right? So I completely agree with Ajit. I agree with also Hafizul when he mentioned that there is a huge gap. It's not really a slip between the cup and the lip anymore. It's a huge gap in terms of what convenience is to an end user versus what the actual security protocols and security systems are to protect the entire system. That's one. Why I say that? So think of identity. Identity to a user is only in terms of how fast and how quickly and how most conveniently I can verify myself to an authentication system. So in that sense, what Ajit said is perfect. I would like it to be fast. I like it to be convenient. I like it to be multi-factor, but still not carrying too many devices or not carrying too many points of information on me. I'd like somebody to take care of that for me. So I'd like to offload that. On the other side, I see the same thing in blockchain when you're talking about wallets and when you're talking about a pure public key, private key based system where you have to maintain all the private keys or else you lose your money in most of the cases. Again, users offload most of it to wallets or wallet service providers or exchanges or any kind of vault that assures them of that service. So standard end user in cryptography is very hard to please because if you tell them that it's all the cryptography that matters and you have to really go with the nitty-gritty details of the math, they are going to not buy your product, period. And if you tell them that, okay, I'm going to take care of all your security and privacy issues, then the point is the company is really taking care of that. So the entire onus goes back to the company. Now, in a blockchain kind of a spectrum where it's completely decentralized in most of the cases, you cannot go back and blame a company if something gets stolen because they'll come back and see you, it's your problem. But in case where Ajit is, you can go back to the company and say, you said you will protect my secrecy or my security or privacy. So there comes the entire structure of the cryptographic system. That's one. The second is, the major problem is no system is isolated anymore. So when you say you have an identity, your identity is being used in every single connected system that you're on. So you have a traceability issue that goes on across systems, not just within the system. However, from our convenient academic point of view, we have always designed systems in isolation. We knew systems were in isolation all through, and we have designed it cryptographically in that way. So cryptography has solutions. I generally tell my students that cryptography is more like a library at the back end. You go back and look for solutions when you need to do something, but the system design matters way more. The friction is between these two. The people who are the system designers quite often don't know all the details about the algorithms in the crypto side. And those who are the algorithm side of crypto, they don't care about the system and users most of the time.
Yes, that's
So
true.
that's the biggest friction. Right? I think that's the biggest friction. Right. I'll allow for someone else to chip in with that.
Yeah. Hafiz, do you want to add something?
Yeah, so Sourav is correctly addressing the points, but I want to mention few more points. So, as a academician, we are designing many of the cryptographic protocols. As I'm looking for the theoretical part. So, in the design part, so I'm mostly trying to follow the standards like security aspect, like ciphertext indistinguishability, Trojan ciphertext attack, Trojan plaintext attack, kind of theoretical aspects actually followed by across the world. So that's fine, but if my protocol is going to implement in industry, so there is a big gap in between the implementation and the design of the protocols. So during the implementation in the hardware, so there are many other kind of attacks is possible. Those I do not know. I aware about the many of the attacks, but whenever I'm just designing the protocol just from the theoretical point of view, I tested, yes, this kind of attacks is my protocol is resisting. That's fine. But whenever it is actually implemented in the industry, so industry people can understand, so what kind of problem can arise is due to the implementation in the hardware. So there is a big gap in between the academia and industry. So if we reduce this gap, then only we can design some secure protocols. This is one aspect. And as I pointed out earlier, that the how actually we are using the protocols. So behind that, what I feel from my personal opinion is like that. So there must be some central agency or law enforcement agency. They will, that is, before applying any of the algorithms for the practical application, they have to test it. Yes, this is the protocol, this can resist most of the attacks, or this is, yes, this is a good protocol. So they have to test it. And not only that, so this is not, I'm not talking about any single protocol like RSA or LGAM or whatever. So there might be a set of protocols that might be enlisted by the agency, and the industry people, as per their choice, they can choose the respective protocol they are comfortable with, and accordingly they can design the chat application. It may be some secret hardware, so kind of things. So I feel the good practice of the law and enforcement.
So Ajit, what are your views?
I have totally contrary views over there, whatever Hafiz said, right? The community of cryptographers, okay, apart from the NIST, whatever NIST recommends, right? I have seen that most of the cryptographic community, they don't even follow that or don't even care for NIST, right? Let's take simple example. The curve that is used in the Bitcoin's signing algorithms, that is SEC 256K1, right? Yeah, elliptical curve. So that is not even recommended by NIST. And whatever curves are recommended by NIST, they all have some or the other flaws. That is one. Dual EC DRBG was PRNG scheme recommended by NIST, and that was part of all the Cisco's appliances to generate the keys. Okay, and these keys were these all Juniper and Cisco, mostly Cisco devices. They had this flaw with their RNGs, and that was exploited, and all were backdoor. They were using the recommended schemes by the NIST, right? Okay, so I have reservations. So whenever you talk about the compliance with the NIST or other standards, then you have to choose whether you want to be compliant or you want to be secure. Okay, very simple example. Again, RNG tester, okay, and dieharder. RNG tester is the NIST approved tool, not dieharder. And you see the set of tests involved in dieharder, they are much more larger. They test any RNG or any PRNG better than the NIST approved tools. So I rest my case there.
So what is the suggestion from your side? Like, as you mentioned already,
community has to do a better task. Community has to do. It's not the NIST which is commenting that no, this algorithm was backdoor or there was some weakness discovered in this, right? NIST never came up. It was the community which has been disclosing time and again, right? So I will be giving more weightage to what community is saying than what government is saying. Oh, sorry, any agency is saying.
Yeah, so the gap that we are actually discussing, that there is a cryptographic community developing good algorithms, and then there is a industry community which is actually adopting those primitives. So and we see that there is a difference. Like most of the things don't get implemented the way they are proposed. So what do you suggest? How we can actually build an ecosystem wherein things can be actually the way they can be? Like for example, you see most of the implementations of blockchain. They're at a very abstract level compared to what is proposed. So, what do you suggest in terms of like how these two communities can have a good collaboration? What kind of things can be done?
I will chime in for this one. So I work with a bunch of projects at NTU which have a very strong industry front. When I say an industry front, there are three different ways that academia collaborates with industry. One is academia has a research lab from which a product probably comes out to a certain technology readiness level. It gets into a demo or a prototype level, and then the spin-off. So this is one side. In blockchain, a lot of companies came up this way. In every single discipline, a lot of companies came in this way. So Certicom, the one that we know of from Canada, one of the first big company, was from University of Waterloo. So RSA also came up together with industry and academia. So that's one. The second is go the Xerox or the IBM route. Have a very strong research team within the company who takes care of the in-house development and solves the in-house problems. So that is currently the route of Facebook or Google or Amazon or Microsoft. That's a very standard route. And the third one is an amalgamation between the two. So you don't go clearly from academia, you don't go purely from the industry, but you do have a strong collaboration between institutes of higher learning, and you do have collaborations with the industry. In that case, what most of the countries are doing right now is you need to have something of a middle zone. You need to have something like IMEC in Belgium, or A-Star in Singapore, or TNO in the Netherlands, or AIT in Austria, or Fraunhofer in Germany. So you need to have this middle ground, which is more of a translational unit. Again, as I said, I'll stick to my point as before, academicians and practitioners do not just talk to each other very often. They don't talk to each other very often simply because the language doesn't match.
Yeah.
It's a very different language. It's a
Yes.
very different style of communication. It's a very different application side of the story. So you need to have these translationary bodies in between. That helps a lot. That has helped a lot. Would be nice to have government in between, but that doesn't work that often. So something which is a translation, more like a lab in between, would be a good model, in my opinion.
So, Hafiz, do you want to add something to it?
It's my pleasure to listen Ajit, and I have certain differences with his opinion, because if we talked about the AES or DS, so it is a standards and it is widely used. So can the industry people can replace AES? So what I suggest, what the algorithm you have designed, you make it public, so public can use it, and if they can find some weaknesses, then you can report, and accordingly the designer can modify it. So this is the way we can evolve the ecosystem from to make it more secure. So that is the way. But if I use any private algorithm that is developed by some it may be any people, and that is not well tested, so the security of the protocol will not be well justified, because later if the protocol is revealed, the algorithm is revealed, there might be some simple loopholes, right? So using that algorithm, if I do that means lots of communication, all the previous communication will be insecure. So that is why I suggest to use the standards algorithm that is recommended by some agency. So not to use any private algorithms. That is my point.
Yeah. So, so one last question to all of you. So, do you feel that we have the right manpower at this stage? If we talk about, say, Indian ecosystem, for example, or say even a global ecosystem, we have the right manpower which can work in the crypto industry. And is it a barrier to the implementations of crypto in digitization? Do you believe that it's actually a barrier, or do you think that we have right amount of people with the required skills to actually work in this domain? So I can maybe start with Ajit, because he deals a lot of with recruitment maybe.
Right. So numbers, or the amount of people in this space, uh, that's not a constraint, or there are no less number of people. There are adequate people. Okay, it's just that they are working in silos, right? As Sourav said, maybe the language is not matching, or we are not very outgoing or very social. I haven't seen social cryptographer, right? So maybe that might be the reason. As he said, that there are various approaches who are where industry and academia are working together. Middle ways are there, right, where people are getting together. And here we see that DSCI has done a fantastic job, right? Their National Center of Excellence. It has brought many cryptographers in last 16 or 18 months than we have done in last 17 or 16 years, right? So these are the forums that we need. We have very good and excellent people, talented people, skillful people in India, but all are working in silos, right? These kind of forums, they will help to bring people together, brainstorm on the problems, okay, and then find out better solutions, help policymakers to with good quality suggestions to improve on the overall security posture and direct the research where effort should be put, etc. Right. So this is a good initiative, and I would like to see more of these.
Sort of maybe.
Right. I agree with Ajit that the number of people is probably not the big issue. We have really strong people in different areas right now. I'll point out a different side to it. I think the project timeline, if I am to do a project management in security, then the project timeline in our head as an academician versus the project timeline as in the head of a business developer are extremely different. So you have to deliver a project in 6 months. I cannot even think of an algorithm in 6 months for you. If you have that gap, then the best is to follow what Hafiz said. Just go with the off the shelf, somebody approved it, go ahead with that, get an FIPA certification, and you're good to go. Because I cannot produce an algorithm, design a protocol, get it tested by the community, and give you as an outcome within a 6 month or a 1 year deadline. That's impossible. So cryptography as a subject has a very long timeline. It started with 77, 78 algorithms, which we're still using today. Think of that. There is nothing in the
Yeah.
internet era which we're using from 77 or 78. Maybe machine learning, but that's about it. That has evolved long, long time. So this timeline doesn't match with a product development timeline in the software industry. It just doesn't go hand in hand. So we need people who know both the sides of the story. Yes, to start with, you'll have to go with the faster deadline, deliver the products. But at the back end, in the back burner, you have to keep these long timeline projects, which evolve, like a lattice-based encryption or signature schemes evolving now. It will be used maybe in 10 years' time, maybe in 20 years' time, but they cannot be standardized just yet. So that's the difference, not the manpower. I don't think manpower is the problem.
So
I
Hafiz, do you also see
Yeah,
the same?
yeah. I completely agree with Saurabh. And just I completed one of my project from the this funding agency, and my deadline is for only 6 months, and I have to design a protocol test, and I have to deliver everything. So as in the during the feedback time, I have given the same reply that I need more time to test the security and implementation all this, and 6 months is not sufficient. That is one thing. And another thing, as a cryptographer, as a academician, what I felt, yeah, we can design the theoretical aspect, but for the implementation aspect, yes, we are lacking the infrastructure, because in academy, that is academic institution, so the infrastructure we need, so mostly it is not available in most of the academic institution. So what we need in this case, we need that is very strong collaboration with the industry people, and if they extend their hand to the academic institution, then we are ready to serve the country. So that means I design some protocols, and it could be implemented in some industry, and they can give their feedback. Academically, we can give our feedback, and this is the way we can evolve. That is from one ecosystem to more secure ecosystems.
So I just want to have one question to you again, Hafiz. So you said that there is a project of 6 months, right? And you said that basically you cannot do it. And I also got some project where they have reduced the timeline from
Yeah.
say X years to like X minus some years, and we are seeing that. But the point is that again, I'm coming to that manpower question. So don't you think that, let's suppose if two or three people having the same capabilities, same
No,
area of
no,
interest,
sir.
working in that area may reduce that timeline?
Sir, I don't think we have the problem of the manpower. We have 130 crores people. We do not have the manpower problem. Problem is that I feel, from my point side, that good infrastructures. If we have a good infrastructure, I have many good students, but I do not have good infrastructure. So that is why I cannot implement the protocol. Theoretically, yes, I can say that this protocol is secure. This kind of attack is resisting. That's fine, but I cannot assure the hardware security. So that is one of the good aspects. So I think only the industry people can look into this side.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Hafizul. I'm
Yes.
sorry, I have to interrupt. Now we are
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
short with time. So I'd like to thank you all. It was a very engaging and insightful session. And thank you for sharing your knowledge and all the experiences you had and all the knowledge and what else we can do here. So Thank you, Dr. Gaurav. Thank you, Professor Sourav.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Ajit, and thank you, Dr. Hafizul.
Thank you. Thank
It
you.
was
Thank you
really
to all the
nice.
panel members.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.